Good evening, everyone. My name is Rajat Sabarwal. I run Credit Suisse equities business in India. Thank you for all being here. I realize this is late evening on day 3, so it's a lot of fatigue has set in. But we are here to discuss a very important political event, which is India's parliamentary elections, which the results are due in the next 7 weeks. And it's for the first time ever that since the time that the economy has opened up, the debate is not on religious and caste equations, but who can provide better governance in the economy, restore the economy, strengthen it, and also, of course, who's less corrupt. The markets have been on a tear, which has a lot to do with optimism and excitement around a strong government in Delhi. To put it mildly, Indian politics is complex with numerous political parties and shifting alliances. Most Indians struggle to understand the political undercurrents, let alone predict them. That, of course, does not prevent us from loudly voicing our opinions. But there are a select few who have the wisdom, the skills, and the experience to help us and identify and make sense of the political trends and interpret them from economic perspective. Today we have one such amongst us, Dr. Ashok Lahiri, who in a distinguished career stretching back decades has seen it all. He's been an academician, taught economics and statistics, has been on boards of national and international financial institutions and banks like Asian Development Bank and UCO Bank, has worked in critical roles in state governments, and has been the chief economic advisor to the Finance Minister of India. But today, we would like to see him in his avatar of a leading Indian psephologist. He was the first one. He was the original psephologist in India, started way back in 1977. We can learn from him on how reliable opinion polls are, why most political parties want them banned, how he thinks the verdict will shape up, and what the key issues are in front of voters, and most importantly, how winner will interpret the verdict. Need we fear the third front government, and then the mother of all questions? Can a strong verdict bring the economy's mojo back? Lastly, there's another lingering thought in everyone's mind: Indian bureaucracy. Can the bureaucracy facilitate or stall a political dispensation with strong intent? That and more in the next 45-50 minutes. Over to you, Dr. Lahiri.
Thank you, Rajat, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Let me start by thanking the organizers for reposing so much faith and trust in me to interpret what is going on in the political sphere in India and to decipher the future. So let me try very hard and give you my thoughts. Sheil told me that most of you know about the Indian political system, but let me give you a little backgrounder. India is again going to celebrate democracy at the national level for the 16th time since independence in 1947. Voting for the 543 seats in the Lok Sabha, that's the lower house of parliament, will take place in 9 stages between April 7th and May 12th. I call it a celebration of democracy, not only because of this almost uninterrupted and exceptional exercise of democratic rights in the post-colonial period, but also because of the scale of the operations. You can get an idea about how big the election is from the number of polling booths. The number of polling booths is close to 1,930,000. In the first general election held in 1951-52, the total electorate was 173 million, of whom only 106 million exercised their votes. In the upcoming election, the electorate is about 815 million. It's in excess of the total population of Europe. India follows the first past the post system and the Westminster model. Voters choose among individual candidates in every constituency. There are 543 constituencies, so voting will take place in each of them. India follows a multi-party system. You must have heard about BJP and Congress, but there are many more parties. Parties have to register with the Election Commission, a very respected independent body which oversees the free and fair elections. To be recognized as a state party, you must get a certain proportion of votes or seats in the state assembly or the National Assembly. You can be a state party, and if you're recognized as a state party in 4 states, then you become a national party. I'm telling you all this to give you the complexity of the situation. The number of national parties in the country is 6. You know BJP, Congress, Bahujan Samaj Party, the 2 communist parties, and so on. The total number of state parties is 52, and registered unrecognized parties is 1,112. So it's a complex situation. The United Progressive Alliance, led by Sonia Gandhi, and with Congress as the lead member, which was formed after 2004 elections, has ruled India for the last 10 years, uninterrupted 10 years of 2 terms. The UPA had come to power in 2004 with outside support when the outgoing National Democratic Alliance, led by the BJP, secured only 169 seats compared to 222 of the UPA. In the 2009 elections, the UPA gained further strength and secured 262 seats compared to NDA's 141 seats. So the UPA has gone from strength to strength between 2004 and 2009. Going forward, the question is, who is going to govern India after the 2014 elections? Results are announced, and what will be the contours of its policies? So who are the main contenders for this election? India is a highly political country. Sir David Butler, the distinguished British psephologist who the BBC describes as the Sultan of swingometers. Some of you may be from Britain and you may have heard his name. And David is a guy I had the privilege of co-authoring a book with. When he came to India, he was struck by how much political news is in Indian newspapers. He commented that the front pages are always about news and gossips about political leaders, political parties, and alliances. So if you have been perusing any Indian news, you must have heard about Narendra Modi, the Chief Minister of the state of Gujarat. Gujarat is one of the most developed states of India on the western coast. Modi is the prime ministerial candidate for the NDA and the BJP. The Congress has not named its prime ministerial candidate, but has announced Rahul Gandhi, the son of late Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi, and also the UPA chairperson Sonia Gandhi, as the vice president as well as its leader. Rahul Gandhi has got a great family history. He is the grandson of Prime Minister Indira Gandhi and great-grandson of the legendary first Prime Minister of India, Jawaharlal Nehru. Manmohan Singh, a technocrat who has been Prime Minister for the last 10 years since 2004, has announced that he will step down after the 2014 election. There is talk of a Modi wave. India does not have a presidential system, and the electors have to cast their votes not for Modi or Rahul Gandhi, except for 2 or 3 constituencies. Yet, according to the opinion polls, there seems to be a lot of enthusiasm about the BJP, among the BJP cadre and also the people about Modi. This is likely to benefit the BJP and NDA. The opponents of Modi are focusing on the riots in Gujarat following the burning of a train in Godhra on 27th February 2002, which caused the deaths of 58 people, including Hindu activists who were returning from Ayodhya. Ayodhya, as you may know, is a historic town of some and a disputed religious site. The Supreme Court of India, the Modi supporters point out, has cleared Modi of complicity in the riots. Furthermore, supporters claim that Gujarat has been free of criminal violence since 2002. Some NDA partners, such as the Janata Dal United, led by Bihar Chief Minister Nitish Kumar, have left the NDA after announcement of Narendra Modi as BJP's prime ministerial candidate. In the BJP also, there are some rumblings by former leaders who have been sidelined in favor of Modi. A spate of desertions from other parties to the BJP in recent weeks, however, seems to suggest that there is a widespread perception of a Modi wave in many parts of India. Many of you in our one-on-one meeting have asked me, what about a third front beyond the BJP and the Congress? The idea of a pre-poll alliance of smaller parties without the BJP and the Congress has come a cropper, with parties unwilling to offer seats to each other to contest as a united front. There are 52 state parties. Each one have got their own strongholds. They don't see any advantage in conceding seats if there is not going to be any synergy. So the third front is not doing well. There is some uncertainty about the prospective performance of the Aam Aadmi Party, or AAP. Aam means common, Aadmi means man, party. Common man's party, or to be politically correct, common woman's party. The year-old new party's spectacular success in the December 2013 Delhi Assembly elections against both the Congress and the BJP has led to considerable worries among the major political parties. AAP's leader is Arvind Kejriwal, a man in his 40s, an IIT graduate and a former income tax official. Kejriwal appears to have a lot of charismatic appeal. According to some surveys, he is more popular as a prospective prime minister than Dr. Manmohan Singh and or Rahul Gandhi. But the AP has major challenges. Delhi is quite different from the rest of the country in many ways. Delhi is cosmopolitan with a large population from the rest of the country. It is the richest states among the states with a per capita income of about 2.5 times that of All India level. It has a literacy rate which is higher than the All India literacy. Does AAP have what it takes to organize an election campaign all over India? An AAP candidate has countered by saying that the AAP is like a rocket launch. We have to wait for the election results to see whether this first rocket launch was a success or not. Also, the AAP came to power in Delhi as a party of protest. It was against costly and unreliable power supply. It was against high and unreliable water supply, genuine grievances of the people. But now it has been in power for 49 days. It was in power for 49 days, then it left. It has been watched. Some voters may have been disappointed by its performance in governance. So what are the main issues of this election? From the opinion polls conducted so far, it appears that the major issues are governance in general and corruption, inflation, and unemployment in particular. Apart from these issues, the other important factor that is going to be pre-poll alliances. Alliances struck among parties can act as a force multiplier and result in a considerably bigger total for the members of the alliance than what they could have got in total if they had fought separately. India has been transforming at a faster speed during the post-liberalization period after 1991. Most of you must have heard about the cliché, Hindu rate of growth. If you take the literacy rate, for example, which had increased from 34.5% in 71 to 52.2% in 1991, increased from 52.2% in the next 20 years to 74.04. Per capita net national product or income, which increased by only by 44%, in those first 20 years, 71 to 91, increased by 169% in the next 20 years. And with the media revolution, Indians are also aware of what is going on in East Asia, the rapid development. So the rapid transformation itself has led to expectations running ahead of achievements. There is demand for better governance, faster growth, employment generation, and poverty alleviation, and better infrastructure in particular in terms of roads, electricity supply, and water supply. The UPA government claims that growth has never been as good as under its rule. The 10-year average growth of 7.9% during 2004 to 2000, the year that is just ending, indeed has been the highest ever since independence. You can't find a 10-year period where growth has been so high. But the popular perception seems to be heavily influenced by the rapidly decelerating growth of the last 4 years. I won't give you the numbers. You know, growth has been coming down from 9.3 to 4.9, according to the recent estimates. When compared to well over 9% growth in the first 3 years of UPA rule, this looks bleak. The deceleration may not have gone down well with the public. Industrial growth, a prerequisite for employment generation, has been particularly disappointing. The General Index of Industrial Production for the month of January 2014 was 0.1% up year on year, January last. Cumulatively, there was no growth in the period April to January 2013-14. The proponents for the UPA point out that due allowance should be made for the fact that the economy was in the midst of a global recession, but the argument does not seem to carry much weight with the electorate. Furthermore, inflation has been very high by past Indian as well as contemporaneous international standards. It is difficult to justify high inflation by reference to the global recession. From 2008-9, consumer price inflation has been above 10% almost every year for the last 4 years. The UPA says income has also gone up, but there is something called money illusion. I see my income, the savings deposits not going up, particularly with rate of interest being lower than the current rate of inflation. It will be surprising if there is no negative vote against this inflation, and this does not translate into a swing away from the Congress. Inflation is avowed by the Indians. There are enough historical instances, maybe if you're interested, I can give you the instances in the past, when high inflation period has inevitably led to bad electoral performance by the ruling party. Last but not the least is the issue of governance and corruption. The India Today magazine had an article entitled 9 Years and 9 Scams, listing the 9 major alleged corruption cases in the 9 UPA years from 2004 to 2013. On top of the well-publicized 2G scam, the Spectrum scam, the Colgate scam, and the Commonwealth Games scam. The surprising success of the new Aam Aadmi Party in the Delhi Assembly election in 2013 was in large part to its promise of corruption-free administration. Its symbol is the broomstick. This broomstick may have touched a very soft spot in the electorate's heart. The pre-poll alliances have not quite worked out in conformity with the best interest of either the Congress or the BJP. The Telangana Rajya Samiti, you know, Andhra Pradesh was recently divided into 2 parts, the Simandhra and Telangana. The guys in Simandhra didn't want the division, so they're against the Congress. There was an expectation in that Telangana, the party that was fighting for a new state, after the state is created, will side with Congress. But what the Congress will claim, has betrayed the Congress. They not only have not merged their party with Congress, they don't even want to have an alliance. Similarly, in Tamil Nadu, the BJP and Congress always used to have the 2 major parties, DMK and ADMK, as partners. One will go with DMK, the other will go with ADMK. Both DMK and ADMK have refused to have alliance with either the BJP or the Congress. BJP has alliances with minor parties. BJP has also not been able to strike an alliance with either of these 2 parties, as I said. BJP also does not have its old allies like the Biju Janata Dal of Orissa or Janata Dal United in Bihar. The Trinamool Congress, the dominant party in West Bengal, has also declined to be a part of the alliance with either the Congress or the BJP. So what are the opinion polls saying? If you ask me who is going to govern India after the results are out, I wish I knew the answer, But a few things appear to be clear from the opinion polls carried out so far. These are not opinion polls that I have carried out. I'm just giving you the opinion polls that have come out in Indian media. It seems the going is tough for the Congress. Barring a very big late swing, the grand old party may find it tough to touch the century mark. The BJP, on the other hand, appears to be ascendant. The best that BJP has ever done is in 1998 and 1999. Remember, 543 is the number of seats. The best that BJP has done ever is 182. It seems all opinion polls agree that it's going to do far better than 182. The question is, will the BJP be close enough to the magic number of 273 to provide the basis for a stable coalition? Because if it falls short of, very much short of 273, it will have to make alliances, and then the tail may wag the dog. So the dog has to be strong enough to not to allow the tail to wag it. For a definitive answer, you have to wait for the results. But if you ask me what is my personal feeling, the wave seems to be working. The wave seems to be working, and it wouldn't be surprising if you find that NDA is close to that 273 mark. NDTV and Hansa Research has forecast 230 for the NDA, with BJP securing 196 seats compared to Congress's 106. Given the build-up of the Modi wave, I have reasons to believe that the actual outcome will be even more favorable to the NDA. This may be an election where the BJP makes serious inroads in some states where it did not have a footprint so far. I know you guys are people with serious money, and you'll ask, what does it mean for economic policies and markets? The markets, as measured by the BSE Sensex, have moved by 2.9% since the beginning of the year. In dollar terms, the rally has been even stronger at 4.4%. The rally is dramatic, though Rajat has told me that it's not correct. You can't choose the bottom of the market to measure it. You must take beginning of the year. But I can't resist the temptation of telling you that the rally is dramatic if you look at the period from August 28, 2013, when the BSE and the rupee both tanked. On August 28, if you calculate it from August 28, it's about 35.4%. According to a recent Forbes article, investors are betting big on a victory for the NDA, led by Narendra Modi, in the 2014 general elections. A market rally before an election is not an uncommon feature in emerging markets. With the presidential elections due in April, the Indonesian market in dollar terms has rallied by 17.5%, and I'm grateful to Rajat that he pointed out that even Karachi index reacted before the Pakistan election. It went up by 5% in dollar terms last year, just before the May election. The markets are expecting a change in government. According to the Forbes article, the 2014 elections are being termed a defining moment in India's economic story. It also quotes a recent RBS report which said that a change of leadership and ensuing policy changes could revive the Indian economy similar to Japan and China in recent years. It also reports how Goldman Sachs upgraded India to overweight from market weight. If Narendra Modi-led NDA forms the government, there is likely to be a more efficient and business-friendly dispensation in Delhi. According to the Economic Freedom of the States of India Report 2013, measured by governance, growth, citizens' rights, and labor and business regulation, Gujarat is at the top of India's 20 largest states, with Tamil Nadu a distant second. Gujarat is not only the freest state, but it is the Indian state with the fastest rate of improvement in the index. The three states recording the fastest improvement in economic freedom have been among the fastest growing states between 2005 and 2011. Critics, however, point out three major chinks in the Gujarat model of development. First, according to the official data of the Gujarat Rural Development Commissioner's Office, the number of people below poverty line, the number of families, in rural areas increased from 2.3 million in April 2000 to 2.4 million in 2006 and 3.0 million in 2012. The government defends itself by saying poverty is going up because there is migration from the poorer states into Gujarat. You decide which side you want to take. Critics also point out that social development indicators have not been able to keep pace with economic development in the state with a population of 60 million. Particularly embarrassing has been the number of children undernourished. The sex ratio at birth is also not very favorable in Gujarat. Third, there are allegations of over-generous giveaways like land and credit at cheap rates and tax breaks to attract businesses in Gujarat. Of course, the proponents of Gujarat model have their own defense, but this is not the time or place to get into the details. I know I'm talking to you guys with some serious money. I do not want to be too definitive about the prospect of an NDA led by Narendra Modi forming the next government, but the likelihood of a consolidation of macroeconomic stability and furthering of reforms is very high. Even if the Congress comes to power, it will take the lessons from these tense pre-election moments, with every opinion poll indicating that electors have a strong dislike for high inflation. They want faster growth, and there is widespread demand for better infrastructure seriously to heart. There is a very large number of new voters who will be added this time to the electoral rolls. There were 717 million eligible voters in 2009 elections to the 15th Lok Sabha. This time, there are 815 million. So if you look at the difference is about 100 million. Who are these 100 million? The 100 million is almost the same as the population of Philippines. The whole Philippines is being added to the electoral rolls of India between these two elections. A large majority of these new voters are young people who are not eligible to vote in the last election but can vote this time. You have to be above 18. So those between 18 and 23 could not vote last time but will be voting this time. The other 51 million could be people who were not registered this time, but electorate is like a river. Some people die, move out, some people add in, so the exact numbers are difficult to get. The first-time voters, particularly the ones between 18 and 23 years of age, will play an important role in determining the outcome of the 2014 elections. Party loyalties sometimes pass on from one generation to another, but many young people think differently from their parents and grandparents. They're better educated than the earlier generations. They have bigger expectations from life and may be hungry for faster growth and development. I believe many of them may vote differently than the rest and influence the outcome. Then there is the growing Indian middle class. It could be as many as 90 million middle-class voters, a formidable proportion of the total voter population. Don't forget that only about 420 million people voted in 2009. So 90 million and 420 million, you can see how big the middle class is. The middle class also has a higher education profile, is more exposed to print and electronic media, and is somewhat better informed and is more particular about the quality of public service, particularly in terms of roads, electricity, water supply, education, and health. Their concerns are more focused on such infrastructure rather than pure subsidies on food, clothing, and housing. The imprint of this new middle class is already there in the Indian elections. The Election Commission has introduced a new provision in the ballot paper, nota. None of the above. It was never there before. And the other interesting thing, you can see the changing times. You professionals will know, two former Infosys senior executives, Nandan Nilekani and the V. Balakrishnan. One of them is fighting, both of them are fighting from Bangalore, one from the Congress party, the other is from the Aam Aadmi party. I personally believe that the coming election will be a game changer in India. The results may have quite a few surprises and give a decisive mandate for change. 20 minutes is over.
Yes.
So I'll stop here.
Thank you so much. We can have the questions now. Can I ask you a question?
Please.
To start with, if you had to stick your neck out and give your personal opinion, where would the NDA end up at?
I don't want to...
We are offshore, we are in a small group.
No, but you will never invite me again if I get it wrong. No, I think I said what I mean. I think there is a bit of conservatism in the opinion polls. What I keep saying, that the two embarrassing things is to imagine a wave where there is none, and the other is there is a wave and you don't catch it. So I'll be surprised if we get to 200. 200 is now a number which will never happen. Either the BJP will fall short, far short of 200, or it will cross 230, 220. Because either there is disenchantment, which we are not following, that BJP is not really popular, or it is popular. It can't be halfway through.
Right. So 213 will get them to about close to 250 with the coalition partners, existing coalition partners.
If they get to 230, then they're home and dry.
Okay. Questions from the audience?
Thank you for that, Dr. Lahiri. I just have a question around the three parties. You've mentioned what is probable, in some ways, what's coming out of the polls, right? And Aam Aadmi Party has very obviously left themselves open to criticism by walking out, as you said, after 49 days, when people put a lot of faith in them. Modi, on the other hand, has shown a model of success in Gujarat, which people then question, can he translate on a national level? So I think it's clear economically what would be better for the country per se. But each of these parties, whether it's the incumbent or whether it's the other two, will have challenges ahead from a financial investor perspective. So could you maybe have an opinion on what would some of these challenges be? If, let's say, Congress is easy, but let's say if a Modi comes or a Kejriwal is able to come.
I think you're asking me a hypothetical question. You may be right, but no one has ever suggested that Mr. Kejriwal is going to form a government in India. So that's very improbable.
There are some theories that with Congress support, they might be propped up, and so there is one two-person school of thought which talks about
no matter which country you come from, any democratic country, managing a party, whether it's the Labour Party in Britain or Congress Party in India, it's a very difficult job. And Mr. Kejriwal is facing that in ticket distribution, for example. Who do you give the ticket to? There is dissatisfaction among the people. I mean, running a political party is not an easy job, and you learn on the job. And Mr. Kejriwal's party is a new party, and he is facing those challenges. And also, as I said, it's a party of protests. I mean, all of us are disgusted by the corruption and inefficiency, but that is, we can agree on that. But if you say, how do you remove it? Then we'll start disagreeing that this is not possible, that is not possible. Now, when it comes to Mr. Modi, what are the downside challenges? The downside challenges, the economic manifesto or the manifesto of neither the Congress or the BJP had come out till yesterday. So they haven't come out openly as to what they were going to do. But reading into manifestos is a tricky job, because before the election they're very generous with their promises, how much they will carry out. But if you recall, BJP at one point of time used to talk about the Bombay Club and Swadeshi, they were against foreign direct investment and so on. But no party, political party in India is a monolith. There are various shades of opinion. And from reports about Mr. Modi, as well as the model that he has followed in Gujarat, it seems it's a very business-friendly approach. The critics will point out that it's only for business. What about the malnourished children and so on? That's a separate matter. But your question is, are there any downside on the business-friendly approach? Not that I can think of, except one has to be slightly careful about tax giveaways. I mean, I am not at all enthusiastic about fiscal incentives, because people, when they come and invest, I believe they're bluffing when they say you have to give this tax incentive. They're going because the rate of return is very high, 18%, 20%, and they don't mind a bit of more cream on top if they can get a tax exemption. But one has to be clear about these tax incentives. But that's not a risk for the business.
Dr. Lahiri, thank you for your comments. I think we're privileged to have someone who's worked in the finance ministry as part of this discussion as well. If I may, two quick questions. One is that there's a backlog of tax cases affecting foreign companies that I believe a lot of people want to address, but a party with dirty hands has a difficult time addressing them, because there's a sense of, how much were you paid to get rid of that? So one question is, does a new party with clean hands, is it in a better position to address those? Because from an FDI perspective, I do think it would make a difference. And secondly, can you give us your perspective as to whether you think NDA will be a cleaner party than Congress, and why you feel that way? Because in a duopoly type of situation, it could be two sides of the same coin.
On the tax regime, I mean, you're referring to the Vodafone case.
And a couple of others as well.
See,
there are transfer pricing cases against a whole set of FDI, current multinationals. And when the country goes around trying to attract FDI, the first thing people do is speak to people on the ground. And they've all got tax notices that they've got to take up. So that tendency, has to stop. And I can tell you, it is an impediment in terms of bringing new FDI into the country.
see, if you ask my personal opinion, no retrospective change in tax laws should be made, but whatever the laws were at that time should be applied. So if it is revealed that taxes were not paid, then the case should go. I think there is an agreement. Even in the Vodafone case, you talk to people, they'll say, no, we are not making any retrospective change as such. We are just interpreting the law in its spirit. Coming to the question about corruption, a cleaner government, the more unified or centralized the structure, you may call it dictatorial, okay, but the BJP, if it comes to power, my personal feeling is that at least the centralization being more, there will be less scope for malfeasance at various levels. But the fish starts rotting from the head. If the head rots, then God help us.
We live in a time of heightened geopolitical tensions. What would mean Modi in power with relations with countries where India has over times had difficult foreign relations, like Pakistan as well as India?
I don't know. You're asking the questions to which I don't know the answer.
Foreign policy is
foreign
still-
policy.
Yeah.
But I think India has reached a level of maturity where, which is inevitable with economic progress and affluence, where disturbance at the border is not conducive for our purposes. So it may be a very strong stand to any incursions or terrorist activities, but other than that, I'm not seriously worried. Even with Pakistan, the Kargil thing was there, but there has not been any serious trouble. I mean, both countries have been quite restrained, and India has been quite restrained. So there may be a projection of strength, but beyond that, I don't think, even Pakistan will be seriously, I don't think Pakistan wants any trouble anywhere. I'm not very
There's a new
worried.
government there as well. Which
There's
is
a new
much
government,
more-
and Indo-Pakistan relations are much better than what it was, say, a few years ago. And now Pakistan is thinking, has they already given MFN status? They had set up a cabinet committee which was considering most favored nation status to India.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Two quick questions. Are the polls in any way biased towards middle to urban sort of class, and therefore we're not actually getting the clear picture? Because obviously the Congress Party is more biased towards helping the rural poor. So if they come out in droves, are we likely to get disappointed here? And my second question is, in a very simplistic way, to play devil's advocate, wouldn't in defeat, a Congress Party just be the old BJP and just act to block anything that goes through Parliament? And we're left going back to the drawing board.
What's the element of surprise and the negative surprise here?
The polling has matured in India. So you can ask any polling agency, a reputed polling agency, about the sampling design. And the sampling design is done by systematic random sampling. I was looking at the sample design of one such agency, and you find that the sample conforms to the census proportion of rural population, urban population, even caste, sex ratio, then religion. So I don't think you should have any apprehensions about a bias, rural-urban bias. That is not the case. However, reporting errors, if you send an investigator to the field and he just sits in a tea shop and fills up forms, then there is a problem. But most polling agencies, again, have a recall. They do a sample check. So opinion polls can go wrong for two reasons. One is incompetence, that you do the wrong sample design, you have the projection methodology wrong. Or it can be for other reasons, like you're manipulating. There was a sting operation recently on some polling agencies, and they have been blacklisted by the media. So as far as Indian opinion polls are concerned, they're as accurate or as inaccurate as polls anywhere in the world. Polls have gone wrong. Mr. Gallup also went wrong, Dr. Gallup, once in the United States. Now what is happening, there is branding, equity. If you're not a fly-by-night operator, you want to build up a reputation that you predict well. On the question of whoever comes to power, the other party paying it back in its own coin, I'm hoping that the less time will be lost in Parliament, because now what is happening the NGOs are monitoring performance by MPs. Just before coming, I was looking at one NGO, what is it called? SNS. I have no point in telling you the full because it's in Hindi. They've looked at how many days were the parliamentarian present, how many questions did the parliamentarian ask, these kind of things. And now parliament sessions are also broadcast live. So ultimately, with the honorable members of parliament, it will be name and shame that has to work. And I hope the quality of debate in parliament will improve. With the advent of the Indian middle class and educated young people, I think they will not give a positive response to this kind of behavior. But having said that, if Congress has suffered in the hands of the opposition when it was in power, you can expect some revenge. I mean,
Okay.
And I might be wrong on these numbers, but historically the turnout in India has been pretty low. And I would think that if you break the turnout down by age and by certain kind of demographics, it's lower in certain areas like young people, and historically people probably haven't turned out as much. If that's the case, and if that is true, how would could the polls be wrong if a large percentage of young people turned out suddenly because of social media, because of the stuff that you talked about in terms of just being more aware about things? And would that change the equation? Would that be something, because people would model based on historical data, you would take a 50% adjustment factor for whatever you end up with. Could that upset the apple cart? Could that change things? And do you think that's possible, that we'll get a much higher turnout this year, this time around?
let me start from the end. Turnout will be high. Turnout is high. And let me sort of differ with you a little bit. Turnout is not low in India. Turnout is high in India by American standards. Indians vote with gusto. The voting percentage, I may be wrong, but if I remember right, it's in the 60s, not too bad, and it has been going up. Now, can the opinion poll results be turned wrong by turnout changing? I don't think it's an easy relationship, because when you do an opinion poll, you go and ask, if the polling was tomorrow or today, here is a ballot paper, who would you vote for? Now, I've asked all of you in this room, and say the people from country X here, they have a preference for Y, and they don't come and vote. So turnout, if the turnout is different in the different age groups, and they have a very different preference, then it can make a difference. And to that extent, theoretically, it's possible. But if the turnout goes up, I think anti-incumbency becomes even stronger, because people don't go and vote to keep someone in power. It's more or less a negative vote. It's out of anger that people try to go and or express their dissatisfaction, but I may be wrong.
Thank you, Dr. Lahiri. Thank you, everybody, for joining us here.